from the 916. Hearsay. Ultimately, the Niners still need to approve of the trade assets that would come from the Commanders. A third team needs to be involved for the trade to happen. Ayuk isn't going anywhere. That's from Nick. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Commanders would come with a better offer. I'm saying initially what the Commanders had was not enough for the Niners, but the Commanders moving off of Dotson, does that mean that they are now going to be more motivated to go and get Brandon Ayuk and give the Niners what they want? We'll continue this conversation because I do think it is at least a different wrinkle to the same Brandon Ayuk conversations we've been having. But now we are joined by one Frankie Cartoscelli. Frankie is on the phone because, nobody's in the office on Fridays. Just nobody's in the office on Fridays. But Frankie's nice enough to join us here. Frankie, how you doing?
Man, I live further away now, so it's how it's like in Natomas. I mean, I was 15 minutes away before, I think. Now I'm like 40. I'm out here on Elkhorn, the edge of Sacramento, which is nice. We like it out here. It's quiet, but sorry I can't be there with you, man. But I'm doing good. How are you today?
Wait, I'm confused. I thought you were moving somewhere else in Natomas.
I mean, I don't know if this is actually technically Natomas anymore. I think this is more like on the verge of Rio Linda. It's out here. It is
not if you're 40 minutes away.
It's like, well, but that's with lights and traffic and everything that goes with it. And it takes me like 35 minutes unless I'm driving in like I usually do it at 6:30. If I was going to come in today, obviously I'm not going to go in that early. But we'll be getting our roundtables in pretty soon. I was talking to Brendan about how I'm kind of getting that itch, man. I want to get around you and Chris at the table, and which, by the way, 2 straight times I've only talked to you now. I know Chris, so that's pretty tough. But,
well, I mean, look, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me, Frankie. Talk to Chris.
It is off season, Frankie.
I'm saying
What do you got for me this morning?
Let's start here, Frankie. All right. And yesterday with Brendan, I was talking about the difference between the word prove and the word show. And I don't necessarily think that these guys I'm about to name off have something to prove, but I do think they have something to show. And the 3 names that I said in no particular order yesterday, DeAaron Fox, Mike Brown, and Keegan Murray. Those are my 3 most important guys that have something to show this season. Mike Brown, we'll talk about him a little bit later, whether or not he is one of those elite coaches. DeAaron Fox, is he an elite point guard in this league? And of course, Keegan Murray, is he going to be one of the elite talents in this league? Would you disagree with any of those names? Would you add or remove any names to that list?
I think that's a pretty good 3. I mean, just for the reasons I think that you guys probably went over as well, that DeAaron Fox, it's essentially a contract year for him. I know that he has 1 more year after this year on his deal, but he's definitely a player that wants to maximize himself financially, obviously, and on the floor. He wants that Supermax extension that he'll be eligible to sign if he can make it all NBA team. So I think that DeAaron definitely is on my list of players to match you. Obviously, Keegan Murray, another player who can sign an extension after this year. I think he has 1 more deal on his rookie scale contract as well. And then another player for me, I personally think Domantas Sabonis, not that he needs to prove anything else, but I mean, just imagine what 1 more season like his past 2 would do to kind of silence those naysayers. I'm not really necessarily putting him on the same category as needs to prove it this year, but if he has another year, a top 10 MVP finish, I mean, we're talking about obviously a guy who's on track to be one of the best players in franchise history, but the larger narratives can start. If he gets another All-NBA nod, that'd be his 4th. If he can get another All-Star nod, that'd be his 4th. I mean, he's a player that really right now deserves, in my mind, top 15, top 20 consideration. And you don't really see him on a lot of these preseason lists and rankings. And obviously last year, I think we highlighted that as well, about how low and the way that the national media or national basketball fans view Domantas Sabonis. I feel like 1 more big dominant season from him can really change those narratives. But I'd have to say on the Mike Brown front, he's someone to me, I'm not looking at him to prove as much. I look more at the front office because I think Mike Brown has done a great job with the roster and the players that he's been presented with. And now you get to add in a DeMar DeRozan, a 6-time All-Star, a future Hall of Famer. What can Mike Brown do with this group? I think we've seen him already, obviously, take them to the playoffs everywhere he's been before, whether it be Cleveland, Los Angeles, Golden State as the head of their defense. He's been a winner. He is winning in his DNA as a head coach, and I do think that he'll bring more of the same this year. But it depends on what the roster looks like. And right now, we haven't seen much movement in a while, but still about a month to go until camp.
Talking to Frankie Cartoscelli, Sactown Sports lead editor and Kings insider. Frankie, another thing we brought up, and I know you saw this with the amount of miles run per game and how 3 Sacramento Kings were on that list, with Domantas Sabonis running the most total miles in the 2023-2024 season. Do you think the offense needs to evolve from this, what they've been doing the last couple of years with the flow offense? Do you think it needs to evolve?
I mean, it really depends on what that new look is going to be with DeMar DeRozan. We know what the Kings offense has looked like, which is a high dribble handoff offense. Obviously, they like to push the pace with DeAaron Fox and Malik Monk, and when Davion Mitchell was here, another guy who can get up and down the floor. But what is this team going to look like with, inserting DeMar DeRozan for Harrison Barnes, someone who is going to get a lot more looks than Harrison Barnes did, and especially off those DHOs. Harrison Barnes wasn't really somebody you saw too often come off of Domantas Sabonis screens, but I think we'll see a lot of DeMar DeRozan off those similar actions. And we've seen that obviously already with, if you've been on social media, DeMar DeRozan and Sabonis right now, and so in Southern California going through workouts right now, kind of trying to figure out what their spots are going to be. But that could definitely make things a little, slow things down a little bit. But also in the second unit, Jordan McLaughlin's going to be the floor general with that second unit. At least that's the plan heading into camp. There's always a possibility that Malik Monk could take over those minutes if the Kings want to go a different route. But how is that going to change the offense? These are not obvious. That's not a key addition. Jordan McLaughlin, I don't think, is going to be someone who's going to be contingent on the team's success completely. But I look more at the DeMar DeRozan aspect of that as what will the offense look like? Will it slow things down? If so, how much? Because the Kings, we saw them last year. They went from the best offense the NBA had ever seen in 2022, 2023. The league adapted. The league adjusted. A lot of other teams had their highest offensive ratings in their franchise history, or ones that even neared the Kings number from the season before. So how much different are things going to be? Can De'Aaron Fox stay on the floor and stay healthy and run that offense? And Domantas Sabonis, like we saw, played 82 games last year. If he continues to stay healthy, I feel pretty good about where the Kings offense is going to be, because he's the hub. He's the one that can run the offense out of the post. He can run the offense on the fast break. And if he's out there, he's such a dynamic force that I feel confident that he'll find the right passing lanes and the right open spots whenever that they present themselves.
Talking to Frankie Cartoscelli, Sactown Sports lead editor and Kings insider. Frankie, where are you at? This last question here. Where are you at on the 2-guard position and who should start?
It's one that I've gone back and forth about. I think that the defensive aspect could play a larger role. We know Mike Brown likes his defense, and it's been something that the team has lacked since 2022 when they were coming into training camp. I do think that Keon Ellis, to me, is the ideal candidate to start the season at the 2-guard spot. I've gone back and forth over it. I think that there have been some whispers just from people I've been talking to that Kevin Huerter could be back in that role come camp. But I think the defense is going to play an important role. We've seen how many times the Kings have fallen behind early in these games, and Kevin Huerter, that's an aspect of his game he has to improve on. He's still relatively young. I think he's 25 years old now, heading into his 5th or 6th NBA season. Can he improve on the defensive end and have it so that the Kings don't have to survive these targets where teams are looking to switch on to him and have their better offensive player, whether it be their 2-guard or small forward? The Devin Bookers, the Paul Georges of the league are being switched on to Kevin Huerter in these situations and getting exposed. So I think that Keon Ellis obviously can provide the Kings with some relief in that aspect, and also be a player that can knock down the three. We saw him shoot, I think, almost 40% last year, and someone who showed a lot of promise, someone who came from being undrafted and burst onto the scene last year and really made a difference. Was one of the main reasons why the Kings stayed where they did in the playoff race. Ended up being a 9th seed finish, but the defense turned a corner over the last half of the year where Keon Ellis finally got the consistent minutes that a lot of fans were asking for. Will he be a player that can play 20-plus minutes per night this year and open the year as a starter? I would guess that's more likely than not, but the Mike Brown, they could like what they saw from Kevin Huerter when they were really operating at their best. In that 2022-23 season, that offense was just lights out with Kevin Huerter, being at the top of his game. But we never really saw that last year before Kevin went down with that shoulder injury. He never really was that presence we saw the year before. And if he can get back to that impact and provide more of a defensive end, there's definitely a conversation to be had about him starting. But I think the Kings have dug themselves into too many holes to start these games. And I know there's the argument about it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But I think it'd be a lot easier for the Kings to finish some of these games without having to work their way back from 10, 12, 14-point deficits all the time, which, of course, is not all on Kevin Huerter, but more times than not, and you can ask a lot of people that covered the Kings, and you obviously watched every game last year too, he got targeted early on in games over and over again until Mike Brown finally made a switch. So I would guess Keon Ellis opens the year as a starting two guard. I think he's earned it. I think that he ended last year in a position to where I believe he earned that heading into training camp. But we've seen Mike Brown surprise us before with the KZ Okpalas of the world and the Chris Duarte last year experiment. So there could be some of that, funny business this year again. But I think that Mike Brown will end up going with the guy he feels most comfortable with, and that could be Keon Ellis.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting because you have a situation where you could say whether or not an O is one of those terms that just words that people do not like in sports. But you could say that, well, Kevin Huerter didn't really lose his spot. So he's kind of owed the opportunity to start. But if you remember what actually was happening before he got injured, I mean, we were having conversations about him just getting benched straight up. You know what I mean? So then he gets hurt. So it kind of throws a wrench into the whole thing. I really do wonder how the Kings view it, if they view it as, hey, it's Keon's spot. He ended the season in that position, or you can't lose your position by getting injured. But we will continue to monitor this. Frankie, thank you so much. You can see all of Frankie's work on SactownSports.com and on the YouTube channel for Sactown Sports. Frankie, enjoy your weekend wherever you are, 40, 50 minutes away. Stay out of that traffic, and I'll see you for some sushi soon.
We'll get some sushi soon. Let's get the round table going again. Maybe in the next couple of weeks. I'm missing being at that table with you guys. But thanks for having me.
I'll have my people call your people. Frankie Cartoscelli. Luckily, we did not talk Yankees that time. Coming up next, we take a quick respite from the Kings to talk a little bit of Raiders and where their coaching staff was ranked for the ESPN analysts. And then at 11 o'clock, we get into the Kings and their underrated defense. Stiles Watkins, Sactown Sports.